Nintendo 64 was known for a lot of things. The games that left a huge impact on the industry, the franchises that took the leap into the third dimension, and even introducing the analog stick, which made controlling 3D games more responsive. But on the other side of things, the Nintendo 64 was quite infamous for its lack of RPGs and JRPGs. There was a Paper Mario here, an Ogre Battle there, but compared to the PlayStation, who was popping out an RPG a minute, Nintendo fans were wanting more. This is where Camelot Software Planning comes into the equation. Nintendo wanted them to make an exclusive RPG for their system, and honestly, why wouldn't they? When they were with Sega, they created the Shining Force series, which was a pretty big deal back then, and they even put an RPG on the PlayStation. And on top of all of this, they made a number of sports games, including Mario Tennis on the Nintendo 64. Yeah, Camelot birthed Waluigi. I mean, that's cool, I guess. What I find fascinating is that Nintendo allowed Camelot to create a brand new intellectual property. They could have easily made this just another Mario RPG, or an RPG using established Nintendo characters, but Camelot had creative control to make the game that they wanted to make. It's unfortunate that the Nintendo 64 was on its final moments, so consumers never got the RPG that the system desperately needed. Instead, Camelot decided to put their project on the newly announced Game Boy Advance. Now, gee willikers, where have I heard that before? Development of this title took around 12 to 18 months. Back then, this would have been considered to be a long period of time to make a game on a handheld device. While this game wasn't a launch title for the Game Boy Advance, it did come out on August 1st of the same year. This game sold a little over 1 million units worldwide, and critics sang its praises, saying that this was a great callback to the Super Nintendo days of RPGs, and some even said that this was the best original GBA title on the system. This is a little game called Golden Sun.
You see this tiny little piece of gray plastic that I'm holding in my hand right here? This is Golden Sun, and it's hands down my favorite JRPG, or really my favorite role-playing game ever made, and it's one of my personal favorite games of all time, and I'm pretty sure you guys were able to guess this because I've talked about this game more times than I can count, be it on live streams, on podcasts, on videos that like this one, for example, and I've teased the ever-living hell out of this episode for the longest time as well, and I'm finally doing it. And what better time to do this episode than on Golden Sun's 15th anniversary? It's a shame because I can't find my party hat. But seeing how Nintendo really isn't doing anything with the franchise at the moment, I figured I'd take it upon myself to give this game a bit of exposure, to tell you guys why I love it, to go in detail as to why I love this game so much. And yeah, that's why I'm here today, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get started.
So now that I've given you guys a bit of this game's development history, I think we should just start talking about the game itself. And you know how there's a lot of games out there that start off with the main character waking up, "Look at how fun life is! It's so great, we're going to a festival!" Well, in Golden Sun, it starts with the main character waking up. But Isaac, this game's main character, doesn't wake up to a good time. He wakes up only to find out that his hometown, Vale, is in grave danger. Mount Aleph has erupted and now boulders are falling from the sky, and one large boulder in particular is barely being held at bay. On top of this, a young boy named Felix somehow ended up hanging on for his life in a river with a violent current. We find someone help him out of the river, but then everyone is in shock. They just stand there, not knowing what to do. A little girl just lost her brother and both of her parents, and we just lost our father. We run back to the square to see if anyone can help us search for the bodies, but then we're interrupted by two mysterious characters. We learn that they had something to do with the eruption, and they notice that we're eavesdropping and are very quick to take us out. Our heroes lay unconscious in the rain, the mysterious characters get away. Roll the title screen. This introduction had me hooked. It does a great job of demonstrating what the people of this world are capable of. We get a taste of the battle system, we encounter our main antagonist, and we're shown through gameplay how powerful they are. And it's a great introduction. I would say it's just about as effective as the first minutes of Majora's Mask. It's unfortunate, however, that shortly after this introduction, the first big problem reveals itself. Characters love to talk all of the frickin' time, and everyone has something to say. Most of the time, it just feels like as if they're talking just to fill space. They do a whole lot of talking, but they don't really say anything worthwhile. That's not to say that the story is bad. It's cliche, but it does the job well enough. The plot is that there are these two mysterious characters known as Satoros and Minardi, and they're after these items known as the elemental stars, so that they can light the 4 elemental lighthouses, which will unleash the powers of alchemy, which was sealed away many, many years ago by these people known as the Jinn, which were also known as adepts nowadays, and it's believed that this power will bring forth the end of the world. Also, you remember that boy who was in the river, and we saw him die? Well, it turns out that he's alive, and he's aiding the antagonists, but it seems like as if he doesn't want to. I wonder why. Our mission is to chase down the 2 antagonists, retrieve the elemental stars, and prevent the lighthouses from being lit. The story isn't bad, it's just a little overdone at this point. We save the world from an evil by using earth, fire, wind, and water elements. We've done this before. Again, I don't think the story is bad, but it does have problems. One thing I've neglected to mention about this game's development history was that this game was so large that they had to split this game into 2 parts, Golden Sun and Golden Sun The Lost Age, which technically means we only get half the story. So, when I beat the game for the first time, I didn't feel very accomplished story-wise. We're supposed to go to the 4 elemental lighthouses, but we only go through 2 in this game. We also don't learn what this Golden Sun is, the thing that this game is named from. Now, maybe there's some lore that I didn't find, or maybe I didn't read the right person's mind, but it did bother me that I didn't discover what the Golden Sun was until the second game. And I guess that's kind of a spoiler for the Lost Age, but, you know, I don't care. Now, with that said, I do think that the towns and interacting with the NPCs make up for the story's shortcomings. Along the way, you'll enter towns, and each one will have something different going on. The first town is where you find your third party member, Ivan, and you help him retrieve his master's rod by taking down a group of thieves. Then you'll find yourself in a town known as Bilbin, where you discover that further to the east, people are being turned into trees. And do I even have to mention Toby? There's so many minigames to play, and participating in the Colossal event is always a fun time. Fuck you, slot machines! Fuck you! It helps that these towns are filled with interesting characters and NPCs. Not all of them have interesting things to say, but some of them I think are kind of charming. What I find interesting is that people in the different towns actually have a culture. They have their own uses and terminology for synergy. Think of synergy like magic. It makes the world of Weyard feel diverse. I like it. However, while you're having a good time exploring the land of Weyard, this game's second problem reveals itself. This game doesn't do the greatest job of telling you where you need to go or what you need to do in order to progress. You can talk to someone and they'll ask you if you're going somewhere, which, to be fair, does provide some direction, but that's if you go out of your way to talk to people. Now, granted, it's an RPG, so talking to NPCs is strongly, heavily recommended, but I think you should be told your next destination through plot. This also births a potential problem in the way of backtracking. I can think of 2 times during my first playthrough where I had to backtrack, but to be fair, one of them was for an optional quest, and it's not to progress with the plot, but it still didn't make backtracking any easier. And what's worse is that this game is fairly open-ended, but with no way to fast travel, and this is what I consider to be this game's greatest problem. So if you miss something, you're gonna have to go all the way back to the previous town or dungeon, find whatever it is that you missed, and then go all the way back. And I understand that this isn't a problem exclusive to Golden Sun, but it's something that I feel needs addressing. The best advice I can give is that if you're stuck and you don't want to look at a guide, then start reading people's minds. You might even find some humorous dialogue every now and then. Now, I've been pointing out a number of this game's shortcomings, but I'm happy to say that this game makes up for all of them with just about everything else. Now, I'll admit that this isn't the most beautiful game on the GBA. It can look a tad pixelated from time to time, but overall, it still looks pretty good. The colors are nice, the character models look good, the environments are varied. It's a solid looking game for the system considering that it released within the same year of the GBA's launch. But how can I not bring up these amazing special effects? Now, I've only noticed how great these effects were recently when I was trying to get this to work on my PSP, and it lagged like a motherfucker. Like how all these sparks just fly around when you've done a really powerful attack. Hell, a number of these attacks look great. Now, Sure, some of them are pretty lackluster, but as you gain more levels, you learn more powerful synergy that feels so satisfying to use in battle. Ragnarok, motherfucker! Yeah! The summons aren't half bad either. I mean, I find Thor to be the most visually appealing, but I have to bring up how badass Judgment is. I mean, you know how some final bosses have a super end-of-the-world attack? That's Judgment, except this time it's the player that's unleashing this attack. And of course, there's Meteor, because I guess every RPG has to have some kind of meteor summon, right? Oh man, where's the white materia when you need it? So, yeah, the game looks good and the special effects look top-notch, even by today's standards. Good on you, Golden Sun. And of course, I have to mention this game's phenomenal soundtrack. Have you ever heard of a man named Motoi Sakuraba? I only brought him up like, a billion times in my previous videos. I don't care what anyone even says anymore. This man is the greatest composer for video game music. Hell, he's one of my favorite musicians, period. I mean, come on. The Golden Sun games, the Dark Souls trilogy, Baten Kaitos Origins, a number of songs in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Smash 4, and Kid Icarus Uprising, including Dark Pit's theme. Fuck if I know how many Tales of games, Eternal Sonata. Man, this guy has one hell of a resume. Koji Kondo? Nobuo Uematsu? Who the fuck are they? I think it goes without saying that I freaking love this soundtrack. The melodies can range from peaceful to hyper-energetic to sad and somber to intense and ominous. It's a varied soundtrack, and in my opinion, it keeps the story interesting and makes everything that you do in this game much more entertaining. Melodies aside, even the instrumental quality is great. If you went back in time before I played this game and played any one of these songs and asked me which system I thought this was on, I would say the Super Nintendo. And if you told me it was on the GBA, I'd kick you in the dick. The GBA isn't known for having the greatest audio quality, but there are games out there that have great soundtracks given the limitations. I'll point you to the Gen 3 Pokemon games and Mother 3 any day of the week. But even with these games, there are some songs that have this weird, out-of-place chiptune sound, and in my opinion, the Sonic Advance titles and the Minish Cap are the biggest offenders of this. And I know some people like it, but to me, it just sounds bad. There's none of that in Golden Sun. Well, at least I didn't notice any. To me, it makes the soundtrack feel distinct, like as if it has its own identity. And in my opinion, the Golden Sun games are the best sounding games on the GBA. Speaking of sound, even the sound effects are pretty great. For the most part, mind you. Attacking enemies sound good, hitting them with powerful attacks sound even better, and hearing them let out one last roar before they fade into nothing is so damn satisfying. However, getting a Venus and a Mars Jinn, more on those later, is painful. Why did they think that these were good sounds to use? So now that we got the visuals and the music out of the way, I think it's time that we talk about the most important part of any game, the gameplay. Duh. One can say that this is what makes the game shine. Shine like the sun. Like a golden sun. Now, first things first, let's talk about the battle system. It's fairly standard. You can attack, defend, use items, summon, blah 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 blah. What makes this battle system stand out is the previously mentioned Jinn. Or Jinny. Okay, so I think the singular term is Jinny and the plural term is Jinn. I mean, I honestly, I don't get it. Anyway, there are 4 types of Jinn based off of the 4 elements. There are 7 of each Jinn for you to find and use. Seeing how you have a party of 4 and each member gets 7, that brings the total to 28. Giving a Jinny to an adept that shares the same element will increase his or her stats and learn new elemental synergy. For example, Isaac is a Venus adept, Venus being the earth element, so if you give him a Venus Jinny, his stats will increase, and depending on which Jinny you give him, he'll learn new earth-based energy. On the flip side, if you give him any other Jinny, some of his stats will increase while others decrease. He'll also learn completely new synergy. I give the characters the Jinn that they share the same element with, but that's one aspect that makes Golden Sun, as a series, stand out. If you want to experiment and give your characters all sorts of Jinn, you can. You can use these Jinn to give you an advantage in battle. Each Jinn has their own ability. Some can unleash powerful attacks that can debuff your opponent, some can replenish HP, some can revive fallen party members, and so on and so forth. Once when you use a Jinn in battle, you can use them to summon the element that they're based on. But if you use enough Jinn at the same element, you can unleash a powerful elemental summon like the ones I previously mentioned before. However, if you use a Jinn, then your stats will decrease until the Jinn gets their energy back. So do you risk lowering your stats and losing certain types of synergy to dish out massive damage immediately? Or do you hold on to the Jinn, use what synergy and basic attacks that you have, which will make the fights last longer? This game gives you a number of options of how to fight, and it's a better game for it. You can play the game how you want to play it. My first playthrough of this game and Dark Dawn, I never used any of the Jinn. I only started using the Jinn once when I started the Lost Age, and then I went back to this game and Dark Dawn and used them, and I had a significantly different experience. The Jinn is what makes Golden Sun stand out amongst the ocean of RPGs. You can find these Jinn just about anywhere, in towns, dungeons, and even a select few are scattered around in the overworld. The only problem is that for the ones that you find in the overworld, there's no indication that one would be in a specific location. Sometimes you'll be playing the game like normal and you'll have a random encounter and you find that it's a Jinny. Now I'll admit that it is rewarding when you find one without using a guide, but this also means that these can be easily missed, which in turn means that if you want to get all the Jinn and you missed one that's in the overworld, you're going to have to backtrack and grind until you find the Jinny that you're looking for. But if I'm being completely honest, grinding is a complete non-issue. Not once in any playthrough have I ever had to grind because I hit a wall. And this is something that I notice with a number of RPGs, and it's something that I hear that turns people off. At some points, a player will come across an insanely hard boss, and the only way to beat the damn thing is to grind. I'm looking at you, Demon Wall from Final Fantasy VII! Fuck you! From my experience, there's none of that in Golden Sun. Now, don't misunderstand me. The bosses are not pushovers. They do put up a fight, yes, but I always felt as if I was the one in control. I never panicked, I knew what I was doing, and I had both hands on the wheel. And I still found it rewarding when I finished off a boss because the combat is so fun and engaging. The final boss in particular gave me a lot of shit in this playthrough, but even then, I came out on top, and it felt so good. Back on the topic of grinding, I've only ever grinded when I needed the extra cash to get a piece of armor that I really wanted. But that's the thing, it's something I wanted to do and not something I needed to do. The extra experience and armor would have made my journey easier, yes, but it's stuff that I could do without and have done without in previous playthroughs. On top of this, managing your party is simple. I know that some people like it when games have a large number of characters to manage and get emotionally invested into, and I do too. You can pick the characters that you like the most and develop your own style of play. But on the flip side, I understand why people find this kind of system overwhelming. Managing up to 7 characters, or in some games more, can be tedious and hard to keep track of. In Golden Sun, you get 4 party members and you use each member in battle, like in the Mother series for example. Every member of the party is valuable. Each character contributes something. Every member gets experience after a battle, and it's easier to get attached to these characters as a result. Each character has a purpose for being in the game, and I think this is something that even the greatest of RPGs get wrong. This idea extends past the battlefield. Every member of your party can use elemental synergy to solve puzzles in dungeons or to get extra goodies in towns. Each member can learn a number of synergy through natural talent or by equipping them with special items. Using these abilities is what makes this game's dungeons so much fun to explore. I always loved the Loompa Fortress. You have to use your synergy to become invisible to the guards patrolling the cave. If you step into the light, you'll become visible and the guards will throw you out of the cave. There's also the Crossbone Isle where you put all of the synergy that you've learned into practice. It's a great place to get some valuable endgame items, and the fight with Deadbeard is one of the hardest fights in the game. Even the dungeons that don't focus on synergy usage are still fun. The 2 lighthouses that you have to go to have interesting puzzles, though I do notice that there are a lot of puzzles throughout the entire game where you have to push a block around, or ones where you have to make your way through a maze of platforms. Just an observation on my part. There's moments in the story where you have to explore certain areas to feel more like obstacle courses than dungeons. The Lamakan Desert has you running around looking for an oasis to cool down. If you let this meter fill up to the very top, then you'll take damage, and finding an oasis will lower the bar, allowing you to explore more of the desert. And just be careful for these antlions. They're very touchy-feely. If there's any area in the game that feels most like an obstacle course, it would have to be Colosso. You have to race your opponent through these obstacle courses to see who can reach the battlefield first. The victor is then rewarded with powerful weapons and armor to use against your opponent in a battle to the death. I freaking love Colosso. Yes, the fights are fun, and yeah, the obstacle courses are fun too, but the icing on the cake is that you can put your party members in certain areas where they can use their skills to give you an advantage, like creating an extra platform or stopping contraptions that were meant to throw you off. It's cheating! And it's great! Even the trip to Colosso and Toby is fun. You're on a boat and monsters keep attacking the oarsmen. Once you defeat the monsters, you have to handpick passengers to row the boat. I find it hilarious, honestly. And depending on who you bring, you can access Crossbone Isle early, but you wouldn't be able to get very far, so I don't really see the point. I mean, I guess it's just a way of saying, hey, look at this hidden area that you can go to. There's a bunch of helpful items and rare weapons. Come back when you're strong enough. And that's something I completely forgot to mention when I brought up the combat. You can find these special weapons and chests that have their own unique attacks, which are not only devastating, but a sight to behold. world. It goes back to what I was saying about how the combat in this game is so satisfying thanks to the visual and sound effects. The combat, no, just playing this game feels so good. I think I have an idea of why this game clicks with so many people, myself included. And it's not just that it's a great callback to the classic era of JRPGs. It is, but I think there's something more to it. This game knows what it is. It's a JRPG on a portable handheld. This game was designed to be played on the go. That's why you can map synergy to the 2 shoulder buttons. That's why whenever you buy new gear, you can sell your old gear and equip the gear that you just bought in one motion. That's why you can save at any point that you want in the game. That's why when you die, you warp back to the nearest town and not the title screen. Seriously, fuck you games for doing that shit. I hate you. And that's why you can replenish your synergy just by walking around. So feel free to use those powerful attacks. That's why the battles in this game don't overstay their welcome. This game makes things convenient for the player. Some RPGs out there try so hard to be difficult, so they throw a number of handicaps or difficulty spikes into the equation, which turns people off. Golden Sun is a no bullshit RPG. This game gives you just about everything that you need to get the most enjoyment out of the adventure. No, this game is not perfect. The story is a bit anticlimactic, the characters talk too much, finding the Jinn on your first playthrough can be a pain in the neck, and the fact that there's no fast travel hurts the most. But this game makes up for it by its diverse locations, memorable cast of characters, visuals, music, exploration, combat, minigames. Like I said, it makes up for its shortcomings with just about everything else. I hear from people now and then say that they don't know what RPG would be a good starting point to get into the genre, and in my opinion, Golden Sun is the perfect starting point for newcomers. The combat is satisfying, exploring is rewarding, and managing your party is so simple. I also hear from some people that they can't get into the genre because they tend to be a bit complex. Either they have a complex battle system, or a convoluted leveling up system, or a story that makes absolutely no sense, all in an attempt to stand out and be unique. Golden Sun doesn't try to be anything that it's not. It's a simple game that's easy to come back to time and time again. Look at this, I cleared all of the files on my cartridge, and this doesn't even include how many times I've beaten this game through the Wii U or emulation. Part of this is because it's short, and again, another complaint that I hear about RPGs is that they can overstay their welcome and people don't have time to invest in a game like that. Something like Xenoblade Chronicles comes to mind. My first time playing through this game, not 100% completed, it took me around 21 hours. The second time I beat it with 100% completion, it took me 18 hours. Lastly, my most recent playthrough, which is the one that you're watching right now, only took me 12 hours to beat. Some people out there say that this game isn't all that it's cracked up to be because it's too short and that it's too simple. I could definitely see where they're coming from, but from my perspective, Golden Sun is as simple as it needs to be. It doesn't focus on a mess of a story, and it doesn't have a needlessly complex battle system or level up system because it doesn't need one. That's not what this game is about. This game does exactly what it sets out to do, and it does so with flying colors. And I hope now you guys can finally understand why Golden Sun is my favorite RPG of all time.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all the time that I have for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you can finally understand why I just cannot shut up about this game. If you're interested in purchasing this game, you can actually get it on the Nintendo Wii U's Virtual Console, which means you can actually give Camelot Software your money for a Golden Sun game, which creates demand, which means we could possibly get a Golden Sun 4. Well, that would be fucking great. Join me next time as I cover Golden Sun: The Lost Age. Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess it goes without saying, I'm doing my very first marathon on this channel. And it's going to be of an RPG franchise. You know, most people start off with like Mario or Sonic or something like that because that's easy to do. I say, screw that. I'm gonna do RPGs. Jump into the deep end. I don't need sleep. But anyways, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless, and I hope you have a fantastic day. And please, consider giving this game a shot. God bless, everyone.